Welcome everybody to Mapmaking 101, your introduction to the exciting world of making a map. Today we're going to learn how to make the most simple of maps, a descriptive color map called a choropleth map, where we basically describe the distribution of values from a data set in map form. So the first thing you want to do is open up or download your data from the website. This is practice data that I got from the GeoDa website. You can find other practice data there as well. When you first download it to your desktop or some other convenient folder, it'll probably be downloaded as a zipped file. And this is not useful for us in this form, so you'll want to unzip it. There are some good free like WinZip style kind of programs out there, but you'll basically want to extract and unzip your folder, and this is the one you're going to be using. So if you open it up, you'll notice that it comes with some confusing looking file names. In GIS land, these are treated as one basically map file. The one we're interested in mapping, .shp, they're called shape files. If you think of like, a map is kind of like a shape of something, I guess. That's how I remember it. But you need to treat these as if they all need to kind of be Velcroed together. So if you're going to move these files around, they all need to stay together in a group like this. So don't just move the shape file, keep them all together. And I have them here in my little SF crime folder. Okay. So we're going to use the map making software GeoDa, which is a nifty little free version of GIS mapping software, to turn that data into a lovely map. So the first thing we want to do is open it up. So click the open button. Go find remember we're looking for the shapefile .shp. So you want to go tell it, all right, I want to go find this shapefile I want to map. And go find your folder that contains your SF crime data. So you can see here, there's my little SFPD plots folder. And you can see that it only really cares about that .shp, that shapefile file. But remember, there are those other kind of files that are all there with it. It's just, this is the one we care about, okay? So find your .shp shapefile and open it. And voila, your first map. This is a map of census tracts in the city of San Francisco. And underneath every map, attached to every map, is a table of data. So essentially all we're doing is taking a boring old table of data like you see in an Excel file, for example, and visualizing it. So if you want to see what the data for this shapefile looks like, you can go up here and click on this table button, and it opens up the data set that essentially is crime data for San Francisco. So let's move this around a little bit. And what you see is a bunch of rows that correspond to each census tract. And you can see if you click on each one, it shows you where that is. And so essentially, instead of like a traditional public health data set where we're like dealing with patients or something, or individuals in our study, here our individual data analysis units are like locations. So in this case, census tracts. If you scroll over in your data set, you see that there are 4 crime statistics variables: vandalism, robbery, drugs, car theft. And for this census tract, for example, the one that I have highlighted, there was 1 case of vandalism reported, 0 robbery, 0 drugs, and 0 car thefts, and so on and so forth. So if you wanted to map this to, let's say, identify where there might be hotspots of crime in the city, that's where GIS is really useful because it's kind of hard to tell what's going on if you just look at a bunch of numbers like this. So I just kind of click up here in this top button to kind of unhighlight it, and now we're going to go uh, play around with this a little bit. So let's map like vandalism. Let's go see what vandalism looks like in the city. So the first thing I want to do is go up to my map button in my taskbar because we're going to be mapping stuff. And this gives me a bunch of different options for basically how I want to take that vandalism data and turn it into a descriptive map. Um, what I will show you is a few versions in this demo. Let's start with what's called natural breaks. And basically, what this is doing is saying, I want to cut that vandalism data into like 3, 4, 5, 6, you choose, however many categories. And the GIS software chooses the breakpoints for you. So it chooses what it thinks would be interesting, meaningful kind of cut points in the data. So let's say we want to divide the vandalism statistic into 5 groups. So click 5. This gives you a list of variables that you can map. We're going to do vandalism. And there is your first map. There's your choropleth map. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because you clicked 5 of vandalism. And here's a map of vandalism in San Francisco. So the darker colors correspond to more cases. The lightest color, you can see here, is less than 6 cases. And this is just a visual representation of that table, that data set that we just looked at. The rule of thumb for choosing which number, like how did I know to choose 5? It's kind of up to you, and it depends on the research question, and it depends on the kind of data. 1 or 2 categories is probably not going to be super helpful. If you just chose 1, it would just be 1 solid color. If you chose 20, it wouldn't really be that meaningful because it would just be a whole bunch of different random colors. So usually a good rule of thumb is 4 or 5, so I'm going to stick with 5. This is the vandalism map. So you can right click it and you can save it as like a JPEG, or you can copy it to your clipboard to go move it to like a Word document or something. You'll also want to bring your legend over, so you can copy your legend and go edit it in a Word document or something like that. But that's a choropleth map. So this is the most simple descriptive map that we can make, but it is a lot more useful to us as researchers if we can visualize that data rather than just looking at that big table. So what we can see here is the darker areas seem to be where this particular crime is happening more frequently. So this is vandalism concentrated right around in here. Okay, this is what to do with data that kind of comes with the map, the data set, but you guys are creating your own for your lab. You are identifying variables that represent health statistics in 3 different counties you've lived in, and you're wanting to map one of those. So let's say I wanted to choose West Nile virus, and I wanted to map West Nile virus. You guys are going to map counties. Let's say I'm going to stick with this and do census tracts. So I want to map West Nile virus in 3 different census tracts that I've lived in and see what that looks like, which is what you'll be doing for your lab. So you can come up to, in this case, go back to your taskbar and click table. You want to add a variable. You want to create a new variable to that table. So click add variable. So first, give it an easy name. Nothing weird. Don't start with numbers. And usually they don't like spaces or gaps. So let's say I want to do WNV for West Nile virus. Maybe I'll do underscore because this was for the year 2019. So I'll do West Nile virus dash 19. And I want to tell it where, well, first you can tell it what kind of, what kind of variable it is. Is it a number? Is it a string variable or like words? So let's just stick with the default real because we want to do numbers. And let's tell it that these are all the variables that come with your data set already. I want to just tell it to add this to the end of your data set, so after the last variable. 15 decimal places is probably overkill, so I'm just going to do 3 and click add. So to go see your new variable in your data set, go click on your table button. And you can see here at the end, here's your West Nile virus 19. Here's the new variable I just created. Obviously it's blank because I now need to go in and add that data. So let's just say for the sake of argument that I've lived in these 3 census tracts, and these are the ones I want to map. So let's say I found that the number of cases of West Nile virus in 2019 was 10 in this census tract. Maybe it was 2 in this one, and I found that it was, let's just have some fun here, 100. Lots of mosquitoes. I don't have data for the rest of the census tracts. Maybe you do. You can either fill these in or just keep them blank. So I'll keep them blank because I'm only interested in mapping these 3. Okay, so let's minimize this and let's go map this. So go back up to map. So we did natural breaks before because we had a full set of data points for that variable, and it made a little more sense to break it into 5 categories. And in this case, we only have 3 data points, so it doesn't really make sense to do that. What we can do is basically just click unique values map, which means it'll basically just map, it'll produce a new color for each unique data point. So I have 3 data points that I just entered, so it'll map 3 different colors. So let's try that. And you can see down here is the new variable that I just created. So click West Nile virus, click OK. And here's your map that pops up. Undefined for most of them because I just left them blank. And you can see the 3 census tracts that I've lived, hypothetically. And it shows you corresponding colors. So you recall I put in the numbers 2, 10, and 100. And I clicked unique values, so it gives you a new color for each one. So that's one way to do it. I would suggest playing around, and you can mess around with how you want to visualize it. So go back up to map. Maybe you wanted to do natural breaks, and maybe you wanted to pick like 3 breaks since you had 3 variables. Maybe you just wanted to do 2, like high or low. So let's just see what that looks like. There's no harm in just messing around and making a few maps. Oh, and I got an error message for that one, so it didn't like it. So good to know. Let's see. Okay, that's better. So I clicked quantile map, basically meaning I want to kind of just divide it into a few categories. So I picked 2. And you can see with this map, it looks a little bit different because it basically just broke my variables down into this light color 2 or below, this darker color was my higher variables. So maybe I wanted to just map like, okay, high or low. Um, it's kind of up to you. Just make sure when you save your map, you also bring over your little legend, because otherwise you won't know what those colors actually mean. So this is the task for this lab. This is Map Making 101. There are lots of helpful resources on the GeoDa website. I am also a hopefully helpful resource. If you're having trouble with any of this, please let me know. Send me screenshots of your problems. I love to see screenshots of issues, and I will help you solve them as best I can. And this kind of thing just takes practice when you're first learning a software. A lot of the things look kind of foreign and strange to you, but get used to these kind of few simple steps. And at the end of the day, let's be proud of the fact that you've learned um, a new research method. This is a pretty simple uh, GIS method, but it's very, very powerful, especially when we're wanting to look for patterns as we do in epidemiology. So happy mapping, and we will see you soon. Dr. Bales signing off.